Very much for joining us on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We're here every week. This week, we're streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Facebook is kind of jacked up with me right now, so it's not really working out to Facebook. But we are here, we are around, so you are able to participate in the chat if you'd like. You can go to the chat, say hi, tell us where you're from. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any particular point. My name is Mark, and we are always here every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. With me is always my co-host, Damian Birkel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Good deal, good deal. And special guest this week, let me just bring up her bottom third, Yvonne Robinson Jackson. And I don't know if you know this, Damien, but she has a YouTube channel. And it's a very well produced YouTube channel. I was surprised all the videos that were there. So there's a lot of really good content. And we plan to tap her knowledge as we talk about, do you know what employers want from you? Again, if you guys in the chat should have any questions, should you choose to participate, we'll be glad to stop to talk about our little topical topics and to discuss your questions should you have a job search or career related question to ask us. That's why we're here. We're here to serve you. Unfortunately, we're not here to serve you if you are snowed under like some parts of the country.
Yeah.
The Chicago, we got well, in my area, we got 3.5 inches roughly. I think other parts got like 6 or 7. So, but I have no pity for them because they're in the outer skirts and they deserve to get what they get for different reasons. Anyway, let's go ahead and start the show. Here's something to think about, and I think I've advised for years about how important it is for candidates to show their personality, to distinguish themselves, to help amongst the other things that they should do. But how should job seekers kind of show the balance between their personality and their career portfolio? I'm going to start with you, Damien, first. So, I'm always tapping you for different perspective because I know that it would be somewhat out of the box.
Yeah.
In your vision and throughout the many thousands of folks that you've coached, what's the balance between personality and the career portfolio?
I think that if you are in your sweet spot, you have found your transferable skills, and you are in a position where you are thriving, then your personality is going to naturally shine through. I have been in positions where my personality did not align with the company, and that's always the first part of me getting in trouble. And when you are job searching, interviewing, or what have you, company culture is critical. And so
Mhm.
when we're talking about the balance between personality and career portfolio, always listen to your intuition, because you can do yourself a huge disfavor if everything looks good on paper, the money is great, etc., but you get that feeling inside that's crying out, that's saying something is wrong here. I can tell you from experience that every time I have gone against my intuition, I have lost. And how that matches with their career portfolio, the positions that you have been in the longest and have enjoyed the most are where you naturally excel. And where the balance comes in, the challenge is moving through your career in a series of positions, upward going positions, either within your company or these days with other companies as you make your natural progression, where you fit within the company fits within you, values, requirements, and what have you. And that's the way to balance. You have to be sensitive. You have to feel your way through it many times, and sometimes you have to make difficult decisions.
Hmm.
Sometimes management will change, and the dream job that you have becomes a nightmare. And for your own good, for your own personality
Hmm.
and your career, sometimes you have to make a difficult decision that it's time to move on.
That's fantastic. I love all of that. Yvonne, your turn.
So I'm going to take it to a little bit of structure here in terms of personality and portfolio. First of all,
Mhm.
you have to do a sort of internal analysis. And when you're doing that internal analysis, I know people talk a lot today about personal branding and all that. So I am
Mhm.
more of a professional brander because when you are looking at your audience. Where do you want to work? Who do you want to work with? Who are you communicating with? You do that internal analysis, do that strength and weakness analysis, do that core skills analysis, transferable skills analysis, personal skills analysis, and know what your non negotiables are before you even start looking where you want to go and work. So when
Mhm.
you decide the person who you are and decide, that will help you to know where you're going and what kind of companies you're going to work with. So I sort of incorporate that professional branding within that analysis part to say, okay, this is who I am, this is where I am going. These are the gaps that I need to fix in order to go in and look for that job that I would like to work in. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be, so that I can refuse certain jobs. I don't have to take on every job. I don't have to go and work everywhere. So my professional brand is going to match, and my personality and everything is going to match with my my career portfolio.
Mhm.
So everything is going to be mirrored in my documents. Everything is going to be mirrored in my communication, because I call it the power of me. I did the whole internal analysis, know who I am, what I want, where I'm going. For example, as a career coach, I do not write resumes. It's my non-negotiable. I will not write your resume for you, because
Hmm.
it's something that I did not believe in, that the resume thing. So that is one of my non-negotiable. I will teach you to write it, but I will not do it for you. So that is my non-negotiable. You give me $10,000 to write your resume, I will not take it. It's my non-negotiable. I don't do it.
Okay.
It's not a part. It's not something I want to do for people. I want to kind of teach them how to do it so that they can do it over and over and over again. The same thing with a job. I would not work in a company that is like when I was working, like very small companies and very family oriented companies, because my experience in the past is that sometimes there's is a little bit of conflict, as something goes wrong. Well, my wife says so, or my brother works here, and you go because I take up for my family. So there are
Mhm.
some things in my past where at the time, I would never work for a solopreneur.
Mhm.
And it was my non-negotiable. It cannot be everybody's. It was just mine. So my thing is, I take it from a professional branding standpoint. Start with the me. This is what I want. This is my documents. This is who I'm communicating with. This is my goal, my vision, and this is where I'm going. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to you.
Oh, I think it absolutely does. I found it to be very informative and actually quite intelligent. I really love both of your answers because not only they're all right, but I think they do kind of show the balance. I think with Damien's was one, and I relate to yours as well, Yvonne, because both of you had thought about, have inferred, and Damien probably said it more out, that there's an intuitive part that makes a lot of sense. That if if a like if I would go to a family business, I did that for 3 years, and and I thought the experience was okay. There are some. There's sometimes some code that goes along between family that I didn't try to cross. But I was able to at least cross the boundaries to at least to be able to make a difference, even sometimes say what's needed to be said, even if the big elephant in the room was pink. And that, but not too many people can navigate that space. I was able to. I had some coworkers who didn't. But I think one thing is that a lot of times your employer or the person you're interviewing will let you know that it's okay to show your personality, and sometimes would even bait you into showing your personality. And if you don't, they've kind of made a decision right then and there based on my experience. And I've seen it several times. And, it took one or two times to kind of fail at it for me. And then there was the next time I was able to get it because they were saying, oh, this person likes to be light and have a casual conversation. So I deployed that part of my personality. In the meantime, I've got to also show and not take myself too seriously when I'm presenting myself in my career and why I am a fit for the job. So hopefully, I think hopefully that makes some sense to those who are in the audience. And I think it's one of the tougher things to do as well, because I think some people, they think that because you're presenting yourself that you've got to be all talk and or not respond to the environment that you're around, because again, some employers, they want you to respond to the culture in some kind of way. They want to hear something, and I don't know if that's intentional all the time. I think it's one of those moments where they're trying to teach you whether you'll get it or not, or what I call the taught and not caught, or the taught and caught method, in the sense that somebody's giving you a clue, and if you don't bite, then you may not show yourself really well for the rest of the interview. Damien, did you have anything to add?
What I was thinking as both of you were talking is, for those who are out there and watching us, the quickest way I've learned to pinpoint your transferable skills is through an exercise that Kate Wendelton at the 5 o'clock Club actually developed it. And she developed it from Bernard Haldane, but it's called the 7 stories exercise. I did this when I was out of work, and that's where you write down 7, 14, whatever stories of where you were given a task or you volunteered for it, you supervised others, there were great results, and a person said to you, you're a natural at this, you should do this for a living. And as you compile these stories, you begin to see trends. And as you see these trends, what you're really seeing is where you are at your very best, your sweet spot, if you will. And I frequently do this with folks who are out of work and are maybe saying, this time I want to do it right. And once you know what your transferable skills are, your personality revolves around your transferable skills. And I think it's very important to, before you do anything, know what your core skills are and what you are naturally the best at, and let your personality shine through, because one way or another, your personality is going to show up, and better that it be natural as opposed to a time when you're under intense stress and the quote unquote real you comes out. That's what I was
Mhm.
thinking.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, that's really good, Yvonne.
Yes, and I was just thinking back to the first the question there, and Damien answered too, and with regard to and I agree totally, especially with regard to personality. One the thing with, because everybody is different, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I have lovely teams in companies, and I always think about it because everybody comes from a different place, everybody have different life experiences, right? So everybody's going to come to the table with a different personality based on their life experiences, based on what they can do well, which is what everybody can do well. And I call it their zone of genius, as everybody's been talking about, because the part that makes you maybe better or different in a certain way is your life experiences, or the experiences that you bring to the table from other jobs that make you different, because not everybody have the same life experience. So
Hmm.
that is how your personality really comes across in everything you do in your work. For example, I grew up, sometimes, like I've grown up in Jamaica, right? I
Hmm.
lived in Grand Cayman. I lived in Barbados. I work with the Cayman Islands government. I went back to Jamaica to live. I'm in Canada. I worked in Canada. So my life experience would be different from, somebody else. And
Hmm.
because I have worked with, maybe say, different people in different countries, I sort of maybe understand sometimes different person, different countries, how people behave. When I was at university in Barbados, I went to my university in Barbados. I used to listen to all the people from the different islands. I used to love it. I'm so, I'm good with the richness of the different accents and so on. In
Hmm.
Canada, people who have never really traveled a lot and gone to different places, when the people come from the different countries, you'll find that the accents, sometimes they don't get to the accents or don't understand it so very well. Or so when I go to work in an organization, it's easy for me to pick up the different accents. It's not a problem for me. I understand everything, but somebody else, it might be a little bit more difficult. For example, if you're a French person, say from Quebec, and all you talk to is French people, then somebody comes maybe from China or from the Caribbean or from Africa. It's different. So every organization you go in, you're going to find that your personality is going to come through in everything
Hmm.
that you do. And I agree with Damien when you say you have to kind of align it with the jobs. And the second part, that when he was talking, he talks about the stories, and the stories are very important. And that is why people nowadays talk about journaling, so that you don't forget those wonderful stories. So that when you're going to write your resume, or you're going to talk to somebody in an interview, you have those lovely stories of how you made a difference. And so I agree 100% with what Damien was saying, how stories become very important.
Yeah, I've often said that personality is something companies cannot train. It is something they have to hire. I think a lot of times people do go into interviews, and I've seen them where they actually will stay, their body language does not allow them, or they've allowed their body language to restrict them from relaxing and to have a conversation. I think that's the second way that sometimes the personality really doesn't come out, is that somebody's trying to have a conversation with you and you are only answering the question in its very strictest form, instead of maybe laughing a little, maybe making an appropriate joke or even the side joke, or just smiling even. It's really, I think some people go through those things without realizing that employers will need to see more so that they could tell the difference, and for you to remember, for them to remember you, and not
Mhm.
particularly so that you're showing off. But sometimes that smile, that what you said, the way that you told the story, the tone of you telling the story, makes all of the difference in the world. And I think a lot of people go to interviews, they go and have conversations without being able to get the reciprocation and engagement that they need in order to make a very positive impression. So that's why I think I thought about that question as I began to hear people talk about their experiences in the interviews, how they're going in and out, and how some of them get many. Sometimes not particularly your resume, or it could be the fact that you're just not. You might be in a field where, or in a profession or a culture where they are very engaging and they talk very much about uh, their work and how they work and the jokes they make and all that. And I mean, outside of being inappropriate, depending how much you really want the job, if you're not that kind of person, then don't take the job. But many times people miss the opportunities that they wish they would have had because they don't allow themselves the freedom to be themselves, whatever that looks like for them. So that's
Mhm.
why I thought it was a pretty important question. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
Just one thought, and that is, um, if you don't allow yourself to be yourself when you're answering, it'll it'll throw off the human resource manager because your answer may say one thing, but your micro expressions will say another.
Mm-hmm.
And as you answer, and your body is saying one thing, and your answer is saying something else, that can create a feeling of unease on the part of the human resource manager
Mm-hmm.
because again their antennae are up and their intuition is kicking in, and they're basically saying there's more to the story here that he's really or she is uh, is not saying. And in the end, you're much better off being true to yourself and not getting the job than trying to force yourself into the company mold or try to meet their expectations, or even worse, what you think their expectations are, and then
Mm-hmm.
get into a situation where it's a major disconnect from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I would like to say it's not easy on a job seeker. And the reason why, because people think that, okay, the recruiting system or whatever is broken and process. But it's not broken. You know why? There is no one process. Because if there was one process and template for everybody to follow, we could say it is broken, right? But every company has different processes, and some of the people who come to interview you are not skilled at interviewing. A company
Mhm.
might just say, "Oh, we're going to have an interview, so and so. You over there in sales, and we want a salesperson on the team, or we want so and so on the team." But people normally, in most companies, are not trained interviewers, and it makes it a little bit more challenging for the job seeker who is going to the interview, because these are diverse people. We don't know what to expect. So as Damien was saying a while ago, um, it is very important that you show your personality. But where you, Mark, and Damien comes in, and probably where I come in, is to help a job seeker to navigate that. Because what happens is that you cannot beat confidence and communication, which is the basic. I call them my two pillars of a program that I have. My two pillars. Everybody, if you can communicate well, and if you are confident, and if you practice, and get out there and do it, practice, 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 because that's what's going to give you the confidence, you should be able to master any interview. Because if you're confident, if you can communicate, right? Ask the better questions, do everything that you can do in that light, and it takes practice. It just takes practice, right? And confidence doesn't mean that you have to have this big inner self something. As Mel Robbins say, confidence is um I think what she was trying to say is, just do. Confidence is gained by doing, by
Mm-hmm.
beginning, by starting. So for job seekers out there who are thinking that this is really a massive thing, it is a complicated thing, start by working on your confidence and the way you're communicating, and work with somebody. Even if you can't pay somebody, get some help somewhere, because communication is huge. I go on YouTube all the time. I think we're streaming to YouTube, and I
Mm-hmm.
watch a lot of different people presenting, to see how they communicate and to see how they present. And that makes a lot of difference. So job seekers can do that too. There's so much out there, and a lot of free stuff that they can leverage, and level up their confidence and their communication. And a lot of free stuff. I'm sure that Mark has a lot on this channel, and Damien, I'm sure that you probably have a lot on jobsearching.org that people can go and leverage and get a lot of information, So, it's not hard. So just want to tell job seekers that this is not so as difficult as they think. They can leverage and they can get over all this stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's a lot of things on. There's a lot of free resources that are available to kind of get them on their way. The other part, I think, too, is that they need to make a decision that there's not a lot to lose once you go that route and start to show who you really are. We're not asking you to run naked through the fields. We're saying that in your mind that you have decided that you're not going to be subject to judgment by your personality, who you are by itself, is ultimately clarifying all of that.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next question. And I think this is important too, because you know, storytelling is not an easy thing, and there's a lot of nebulous definitions around it. And Yvonne, I'll start with you on this particular question in the sense that what impresses employers about a good career story?
Okay, to make a career story interesting, right? People like visuals, right? And we do know that when you're going for an interview, they don't want this boring thing. They want to hear something. They want to kind of visualize it. So I would say, just think about going up, down, across. What increases? What decreases and what stayed constant. So when you're writing your career story, and if you have a story about a time when you did something, and just think some impact, some results. So you write up that story, remember what happened in a project, how it started, who you were helping, and what the results were. It is pretty easy to come up with a framework, right? And
Mm,
it's pretty easy to think about things going up, things going down, things not. For example, I increased sales by, say, X% in this organization. I worked with a lady recently, and we were doing her her resume. And I said, tell me, some things that happened when you were at this company. I think she worked with American Express for over 25 years. And I think they had some layoffs, so she was laid off. And then she started telling me about how she did this and saved the company millions of dollars. I said, but it's not even in your resume. That would have been a really nice story to tell, what happened, what she did
mhm.
it for, and the impact on the organization. And I said, that's a lovely story. You saved them so much money? And I'm like, so she saved them money, you know, the
Mhm.
same thing. Did anything increase? Right? Did productivity increase? Was it in COVID? Did you have to move from offline to online? And how did that go? That's a nice story to tell because everybody had to do that, right? And a lot of people were in charge of some of those projects. So people like when the stories when they can visualize some movement. So if you have a career story to tell, make sure that it has a little bit of movement in there, right? What increased, what decreased, what stayed constant, what did they celebrate, things like that. So those are really good things to do when you're telling us. So I think those things make a good career story.
I think that's excellent. And I think you did something, and I'm going to tell this story real quick. I have a colleague that asked me to about a course that he was doing, and he was, in fact, there was several people. For some reason, I'm not the guru of storytelling, but I do think I write stories for a living, so that's what I do, and I think that's why maybe people come and ask me these questions. But he was asking me about his course and what did I think and all that. And something you said, Yvonne, just triggered, and I think it's true. And I think this is what I told him. I said, in your whole course that you produced, that you're putting out in 2022, doesn't talk about interviews, the pandemic, the inflation, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, the question people are going to have ultimately is how relevant this information is. And that being that he was also an older gentleman, they're going to be sure they're not seeing something from 10 years ago. And it really rung a bell with him. But the key point I want to take away from this is that what employers are going to really be impressed is how relevant you're able to make your story to their needs.
Mhm.
Ultimately, they want to know if what you're saying and what you tell and the way that you present, is it relevant to them? And I think relevance is a huge makes a huge impression in telling a great story. Amongst the other things that Yvonne said, that there's peaks and valleys, and that there's a hook, there's results and things. So I thought that was excellent. Damien?
I couldn't agree more. I would have basically said the same thing. A way to ensure you're doing it the right way. Uh, Two things. And Mark, I know I've said this before.
Hmm.
I encourage job seekers to memorize this sentence and think about it every day and when you're interviewing. And it's three words: be the answer. Be the answer to the employer's needs. That's thought number one. And thought number two is when you're interviewing, um, you do have to provide results. You do have to tell a story. And I encourage people to work this in, saying the problem was yada yada yada. The action that I took was blah 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 blah, and the result was boom, whatever it is. And if you work that in, you are creating a framework to provide a different story to different questions, but you're reinforcing each time that there was a problem in the company, there was an action that you took, and there was
Hmm.
a result that you produced. And by framing it up like that, um, you might change the words problem, action, result uh, a little bit as you go through the questions. That forces you to be concise, and that enables you to deliver the answer that they're looking for each and every time. And
Hmm.
it stops you from going way off topic and then having to round and bring it back to topic. And it makes your answers rich, it makes the stories interesting, and it keeps you on track through the entire interview.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think, I think of all the press that I've done
Mhm.
over the years. And Damien, you've done like probably two or three or four or five times more than I've ever had. But one of the things that reason why people come back, because they're able to talk to that person in sound bites, as you mentioned. They're able to give a one or two sentence stories. People think a story is this whole paragraph or a couple paragraphs in their mind. They're replaying it and they think they have to describe every aspect of it. Look, we're not talking about Ernest Hemingway. We're talking about answering a direct question directly. And I think there are sound bites, and if they want to know more, then they'll ask more. But of course,
Exactly.
it does help to go back to the basics of what we've all teach. I don't teach this one on one myself because I don't do one on one these days, but you guys do. But you're teaching people how to answer a question directly. And again, like you always say, you're the answer. So you've got to give them the reason why they're hiring you. If you're unable to establish that in a very short period of time, then it's going to be very hard to convince them otherwise. Yvonne?
Yes, absolutely. And I like frameworks, right? So what
Yeah.
Damien said was really good. And it's the same thing even when you're writing your resume. So if you can just think problem, action, results, context, action, results, whatever makes them remember it easier,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
especially when you go into an organization, everybody has a problem to solve. Why do they? I always say to people, even on LinkedIn when I write, I say, why do you think people hire you? Not because you're here
Hmm.
putting up your hand that you want a job, you want a job. Nobody's hiring anybody because they're putting up their hand and say, I want a job. They're hiring you because they have a problem to solve. So when
Mhm.
you frame it like that, problem, action, results, and then your action and your results, it's like a movie, right? And that is why it's an impressive career story, because you're seeing a movie right now, the problem, the action, results. And as I said, what increases, decreases, and all that, you can, wire that in. But it is really this whole, I'm excited about the whole career thing and all the story thing and the getting the
Mhm.
jobs thing. And I want job seekers to be as excited too, because it's not a boring thing. And when they come on shows like yours and you give them all these frameworks and you help them with all this stuff, it's an exciting thing, No, it's a great thing. I like that. I like what Damien said.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody usually likes what Damien says and ignores what I say. But yeah, but but I do think it is important. My parallel to be the answer for Damien, and I wrote this a few years ago, and by accident, a news outlet had picked it up, is saying, be the prescription to the employer's job description. And there is something about being prescriptive and offering solutions. And you're offering somebody to say, these are the actions that I took. Then you give them an opportunity to explore whatever actions, whether it's not clear or something that really resonates, you give them that person me. And the more you add fluff to it, it's like having, you have a bag of potato chips, you open it, and you thought it was like a lot in it, appears, but most of it was air.
Yeah.
and, there's a very few chips in it than way it appeared before. You don't want to be like that potato chip bag. Just be a whole lot of air. So
Mhm.
in the same way, it just helps to be short, meaty, concise. But I think too, other part of the career story is that, as you said, Yvonne, that having a framework and people picturing and giving them an image of what you can do really helps solidify your ability of what they can see you doing, and placing them next to you in next to your cubicle, and how you'll be able to interact and problem solve together. So I thought that's a pretty important, because we want people to be able to be impressive, and also for employers to even see themselves next to you, talking to you before you're hired, because that's part of the trick, right? Did you guys have anything to add to that?
Yes, I just want to say, you guys, if you put them together, have a framework and be the answer.
Hmm.
Because
Mhm.
when you take that framework and you work it in, it is such an easy way to prepare if you take that framework and be the answer
Hmm.
to their problem.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah.
work that in, and those are the two things that the people need to know and understand. And a key takeaway from your session today: you work within these frameworks. It's easy to remember, so you don't go to these interviews and get flustered.
Yeah.
And be
Mhm.
the answer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Be the
Absolutely.
answer. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
Good.
Damien, you had anything else to add?
Uh, One thought, and that is when you answer questions with a problem, an action, and a result, it gives the employer something that they are always looking for throughout the interview, which is how does this person think? And the way this person thinks, does it really fit within our organization? And that explains some of the trick questions that some companies throw in, like how
Hmm.
many ping pong balls are there in a 747, or how many light bulbs are there in Midtown Manhattan.
Hmm.
It's done to force you to be quick on your feet and come up with an answer. There's no right or wrong answer, but doing something like that allows the employer to see how you think. But if you go through the entire interview demonstrating the way that you think, through the accomplishments that you have made throughout your career, if a trick question comes up, it'll be simple to answer, but the likelihood of it will be reduced because you have fed them the information that they have so desperately needed, which is at the end of the day, is this person qualified? Will this person fit? And do we like the way that this person thinks?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
think one thing you said, and I will add an asterisk to what you said in this way, is that when trick questions or hard questions or maybe uh, they're a little bit more intricate than you expect, a lot of times the answer itself isn't particularly have to be right, but it is the opportunity that the employer has to see how you think and see how you respond. So if you respond in such a way where, that's the most ridiculous question I ever heard in an interview, um, it's not a great answer because it doesn't show how you think. It shows what you think about it, which sometimes you won't have the opportunity in in a working environment to show why that matters to anybody else. But it does help to show say, well, how thoughtful were you and how you got your answer may give clues to how what your thinking process is and does it align with the team that you're going to be working with. And the person's interviewing knows that information. You don't. They're seeing how you do. Now, having said that, don't answer inappropriate trick questions.
Right.
Lord knows we don't need you to give some answer that they're going to be laughing about for years, but you do want to show how you kind of got to some of your answers. And we probably should have a session one of these times, Damien, to talk about how what kind of questions you should expect when you're asked these intricate questions,
Mm-hmm.
and to because sometimes it's a test and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're being tested to see how you answer those questions, and they want to see how you think. So I thought that all these were just excellent. This has been an excellent discussion. Let's go for our third and final one, and I think Yvonne, you alluded to it. We'll jump over back that way um, to you about what impresses employers about a quantifiable achievements and or results. And maybe we could even talk a little bit about. We may even have to go back through some of the questions, either directly, or indirectly, in answering it. Is that data is fairly important these days in the interviewing and hiring process. I think it's always been important, but I think more now that we're kind of interviewing distance, you can't get a physical impression, but you can get a more a mindful one. And the way that people are going to be a look at, okay, what is it that will make me want to hire you, and how will you produce over not being in the office. And quantifying achievements is going to probably be one of the ways that you can show that you're mindful of that. So, in your estimation, Yvonne, what's so impressive about quantifiable achievements or results?
Well, I believe that anybody can just take up a job description and give it back to you and say, I did this, I did that, and I did that. But when you
Hmm.
quantify it, it makes it more believable. And
Yes.
you have to
Hmm.
quantify it in a way that doesn't seem unrealistic too, right? If you
Hmm.
so quantifiable achievements, they will know too whether you're lying to them. They can pick up in an interview whether somebody is lying if you go and say, this was I achieved X results,
Hmm.
depending on the organization and all that. So you also have to be careful when you're quantifying something that you've done on a job and you're going to an interview and you're talking about it. So it on the interviewee side, you have to make sure that you think about those quantifiable achievements long before you go to that interview so that it doesn't sound disingenuous and unrealistic,
Hmm.
and the employees can discern a lot of things about what you say. So they like when you give quantifiable achievements because it tests you in more than one way. It can test you credibility. It can test, whether you know the organization or the product or what you were doing well, or you just picked up a number. So when you're doing those stories with the quantifiable achievements, it can say a lot.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, context matters definitely, and definitely plausibility matters a whole lot too, because you want people to be able to say, "Is he just pulling my leg?" And you should never do that. But that's going to be the first question that comes out of somebody's mouth if they don't understand what you're trying to convey, Damien.
Agreed. And another thing is it's important to quantify right off the bat whether this was something that you did alone or whether you were part of a team, because you can make it sound like you were responsible for the entire outcome. And again, it doesn't sound realistic. Saying that you were part of the team, that this was a concept that you came up with and a team of people made it happen, that's realistic. Here's the other thing. If you make a claim that just doesn't sound right, you don't know who these people know, sometimes at the company. And
Yes,
if you're interviewing and making
yes.
outrageous claims about how good you are, um,
Mm,
one phone call can expose you as a fraud. So, like Yvonne was saying, it's important to know what your quantifiable, measurable benefits are going in, and also be true to yourself. Make sure that they were that the facts, ma'am, nothing but the facts, and the interviewer will respect you. It will come across as the truth and sincere, and probably the most important thing is that it will be believable. And many times it isn't the dollar amount, but like you were saying, Mark, it's the thought process of how you got there. That's what they're looking for. They want to be able to think and say, well, if Mark did this at his current company, he could probably do the same thing or maybe even something better at our company. And so through your story, through your problem action result statement, the person that's interviewing you is automatically thinking about what you could do for them. And that's critically important. And that's why problem action result statements throughout the entire interview reinforces in people's mind that you're a good person, that you're sincere, you're telling the truth, and most importantly, you will fit in our culture. Because, Mark, you and I have talked about this before. Um, the most qualified candidate in a job interview situation doesn't always get the job. And
right.
then, like I've said before, that explains why idiots get promoted.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
That's
sure.
true. One of the things I think even as we all kind of uh, think about that, we don't have that 6 degree of separation in the online world anymore, which is
Mhm.
the real world. We might as well stop separating online and real world, because your online world is your real world, but we can go into that later. But we don't have the 6 degree of separation. We're probably maybe three connections away from the furthest person away from us in another country, or somebody, it may be another industry, or somebody within the same industry. And there's nothing like going through somebody's list of folks of who they're connected to and finding that you're a second degree and you're interviewing with that person, and to
Yeah.
find out that also they may have gone to school together, they've worked on an online project together, maybe they've been on the same podcast, maybe that person interviewed for that your boss on a podcast or on a YouTube channel. I mean, there's a lot of ways to connect now, so you can't make up stuff and
Right,
expect it to
right,
fly
exactly.
without verifying or even stretching the truth and the impact it may have on them. Because I've known people who give all these achievements, but doesn't impact anybody except that person who did the work. In other words, were they just responsible for busy work? I mean, really, in the busy work, for the most part, doesn't mean anything else but to the person who spent the 8 hours a day doing that work.
Hmm.
So again, if you're showing so just because you spill out a bunch of numbers, mean you impacted someone, or to save money, save save time, production, all those things that really matter. But even more so, the idea of having the mindset of a consultant is something I've written about. I've written
Yes.
several articles about it. If you're presenting yourself as a consultant, data's everything. In other words, you're saying that I produce this at this company, and this is what I can do for your company. And you've drawn stories around that data. Be able to give examples. You can show them the roadmap on how you were able to succeed in those manners. And that's why the whole infusion of storytelling and making a good impression really counts, because ultimately that's going to matter a whole lot more than you think it is. I mean, there are people, we talk about this, Damon, people will go and try to think they could just talk themselves into a job.
Right.
That they could just talk and talk and talk and say not a whole lot, except they were very convincing because their body language and they show the confidence and all that. You can show all that, but the savvier person that interviews, and always somebody's savvier than another, is going to, okay, but what did you really accomplish, and how did it impact the company? How did it impact your team? Or how did it impact the client? You're not able to answer those key questions, or and whatever else may come that way, you're kind of just blowing a lot of hot air for the most part. Yvonne, did you have anything to add?
So one of the key words that you keep talking, saying there, is impact,
Hmm.
right? That's a big word. That's a word that most career professionals should probably put on their forehead when you're doing a job, not just when you're going to look for a job. What's your
Right,
impact? You know,
right.
before
Hmm.
I retired from my last company, I remember I was doing something, and I remember my CEO said, "This will be your legacy." You know, so when you're there, when you're on your job, what is your impact? Who are you helping? What are you doing? You know, are you just going there every day and doing the same old, same old, same, or are you impacting something? Are you helping? Are you, increasing anything, decreasing? I don't know why I like the word increase and decrease so much. Or is something remaining constant? Are you helping? Are you
Hmm.
are you helping? It doesn't have to be money. It could be you work with people, you mentor people, and what are the results of your mentoring? So
Hmm.
the impact is a good word, and you keep saying impact, 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 and I can see why you say that word a lot, because it is very important whether you're going to look for a job or you're in a job. I mean, start working on your impact.
Yeah,
What are the changes that you're making? What are people saying when you're not in the room? You know,
yeah, yeah.
that is very important.
And I think performance reviews is one way to reveal, to show
It
whether
is.
you had impact or not. And a lot of times you could take that information from that, which very, if it's done well, it would have the what you achieved and what your benchmarks were. We can go to all the terms, but most likely somewhere, or there might be emails where you can get that information from, where somebody praised you for providing X, Y, and Z. Those are kind of some of the ways that you can start to mine for that information if you don't know it right off, because a lot of times it's right before us. We just don't, we
Exactly.
get so caught up in tasks that we don't really see and understand why and how critical that information might be. Damien?
Right. And, another thing that I've run into a lot when a person is trying to quantify what they did, so often they feel that they have to get it right. I increased sales by, $50,000.27. And what I tell them is the employer is looking for your accomplishment and how you did it and how you got it done and what you produced, but not down to the penny. And I'll walk them through a formula that I've developed. And when a person says, I don't know how much my total volume was that I managed. And then I'd say, well, how much volume was it in a week? Times 4 is a month, times 12 is a year, and there you are. There's the number that you're looking for. And then they'll say, but that isn't the exact number. And I said, all you have to be able to do is tell the person who's interviewing you how you got that number, because your problem, action, result statements on your resume are challenge questions. You want them to ask you how you did whatever the particular bullet point is, and also know that different people will rise to the bait, so to speak, on different bullet points. And so each bullet point is a story within itself and an opportunity for you to shine and be able to bring some of those accomplishments into the interview as you are being interviewed. And again, reinforce that you're the person that's right for the job.
Yeah.
Yep. I
Can
think
I
it
just
also,
add something
go ahead. Go ahead,
to
Yvonne.
what he was saying? I like
Sure.
when you say each bullet point is a story.
Mhm.
That's very important. And another thing that I just wanted to add for anybody who's listening, and I know a lot
Mhm.
of people don't do this, when you're in a job and you get a good email talking about, do you save your emails, people? Do you save it to a folder? I used to forward them to my personal email.
Right.
Every time I get something good, or I something I need, even if it's something that I think is going to get me into trouble, I forward to my personal email, because when you have to go through reams and reams of email for to find information, to either defend yourself, or to celebrate yourself, or to write an interview resume, or to tell a story, sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes you might forget. You could be at a place for 15 years, like my last job where I worked there for 15 years. Sometimes you don't remember everything that happened through the 15 years, and you want to tell a coherent story. So start learning to save your emails and save your information to a folder and send it to your personal email, so it can help you for your database. Everybody needs to have a database, because you are a business of one. And just like how a business runs their business, you gotta have to run Me Incorporated just like a business. So you have your data.
Absolutely. And I love, brag points or bullet points are often, I've heard it said as well. They're the time to brag about what you've done. And one of the things I think as well is I think people need to also include in the LinkedIn their recommendations from other people. We can say all we want about ourselves, but we could definitely save other people time and even and ways to dig information about you is to put it right there in your references section where people are saying said this is the reason why I work with I love working with this person, and they're able to tell those stories. So a lot of times, people miss those opportunities. Or even if somebody wrote a post about you, not necessarily a reference, then go ahead and make a screenshot of that post if it's on social media, or make a copy of the video, or save it somewhere if somebody talks about you in the video. Video recommendations are very, very powerful, and as well if you happen to get them. And one of the ways that you can really, I think there'll come a day where references on your LinkedIn profile are as good as getting references directly from the employer, because more than likely it is the employer or people that work with that employer to show that, yeah, you did work that job. Yeah, you did great at those things, even if you got fired or laid off. So that's just a little bit of food for thought there. We're
Mhm.
2 minutes before the hour, so we've got to shut it down at some particular point. Yvonne, since you're the girl in the group and our guest, what is there something that an event that you have coming up, or something you just absolutely must brag about to the world, or what's that one thing that people can follow you for at this
I like when
particular
you
moment?
say brag, because I tell people that, it's not bragging, but, if you're good, you're good.
Yeah, if it's if it's
So
facts,
here it
it's
is. I
facts. Yeah.
just created, I just learned to create my own funnels. I don't have a techie, so I just created
Hmm.
my own funnels and I created a lovely ebook.
Okay.
And how to find a job fast. And
Okay.
I just last night connected it up with Stripe so that it took me a little while to figure all that stuff out. So I was pretty proud that I was creating so this month I created my own ebook, I created my own blog,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I linked my website to some back end stuff. So, I'm learning things in the back end. I just wanted people to know that whatever you want to do, you can do it. So if they go
Good
to
deal.
goalinspiredcareercoaching.com, which is my website, and I know
Hmm.
my YouTube channel, I have a lot on there too, as you put up there, but my website is also called goalinspiredcareercoaching.com.
Okay.
Um, I work on, I have a blog there, and
All
they
right.
can go and read my little blog. My first blog I did, it will give them a lot of information, a comprehensive job searching strategy, which is, I think, is very important if you're looking for a job. It has to be comprehensive. So I give them all the steps there and all the things that they need to do. So I would say the easiest thing to do now is to go read my blog and check my website out. Goal Inspired Career Coaching.com is my
Good.
website. My YouTube channel
Good
is
deal.
Goal Inspired Career Coaching.
Good deal. All right. Damien.
Uh, Real quickly, thank you for joining us today, and thanks to all of the folks that tune in now or later. Uh, I think I had mentioned this before, but I just got notification that the article that I had been working on with Upjourney actually got published. I
Wow.
haven't
Good
read
deal.
it, but
Good
it's
deal.
not my article. I'm in the article, but
Mhm.
it's always exciting when things like that happen.
That's good too.
That's
I'll
good to
take it.
know.
Talk about your bragging rights. You gotta brag, man. You just got published. Come on.
So,
Yep. I've got a couple of things working out, but just real quick, on builtin.com, I'm included in the article. I was quoted there,
good.
published yesterday, so that got live, so that's good. But even more so, I wrote an article for lensa.com/insights. And there I do a little investigative piece on how to create a better livelihood through assessing more sick leave. And in that article, I talk a lot about how the U.S. is not one of the 21 developed countries that has a national sick leave policy, and how that's hurting
Ah,
U.S. workers. So I really encourage you. You can find that on my profile, especially if you follow my timeline on Twitter and LinkedIn, particularly. I have published a post, and you can follow that article and let me know what you think. In the meantime, Yvonne, thank you very much for joining
You for
us.
having me.
We will definitely have to tap you to come back in the near
mhm.
future. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
For the rest of you, Damien and I will be back next Friday,
Mhm.
same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. In the meantime, I hope you have a good week and you'll stay warm. Too bad that some of us have more snow to shovel than the rest of us, but that's just the way it is. In the meantime, peace in the valley of love. We're gone. We'll see you next week.